Hello, I'm Chris Jones and I live in Saigon, Vietnam. I'm going to attempt to give a short exposition about Vietnamese culture from a Western perspective anyway. When talking about Vietnamese culture, both living and working from a Westerner's point of view, we have to consider that Vietnam is really four main areas: that of the north, the centre, the south and the Mekong. And these areas all have their own peculiarities, shall we say. I'm not in this brief talk going to go into all the different areas, but I'm just going to make some broad generalisations to introduce some of those people who may like to come or think about coming and living in Vietnam as to what to expect when encountering the Vietnamese people as a whole and living in their country. First of all, let's talk about the Vietnamese women. These are a delightful group of people, I must say. They're capable, feminine, self-determining, and worship money. I guess they have that in common with a lot of other people in the world. They're self-determining because over the years of war, they've had to be. While many men were at the war front, the Vietnamese women were at the home front. Some were at the war front as well, but most were at the home front, keeping the fires burning. And as a result of that, they have become very self-determining and independent in their dealings. Thankfully, in Vietnam, there's no such thing as feminism, positive discrimination, or the dreaded political correctness. This is one reason I voted with my feet and left Australia and came to Vietnam. Strangely, though Vietnam is a communist country, most people who live here, Westerners anyway, will certainly say that they experience a lot more personal freedom than they do in the West. And I agree with this. Don't try to follow politics, because there's no freedom at all when it comes to that. But when it comes to personal freedom, excuse me, there's a lot. In terms of the Vietnamese men, it's more complex. They're very capable and brave and strong and tough. It's amazing. Vietnamese are not big people, but the men are very wiry and they're quite strong and fit. Unfortunately, they've been spoiled because there is a favouritism towards male children, and they can be a bit unstable, particularly if they drink. And they all drink and smoke, nearly all of them anyway. And when they drink, they can be violent. So you have to be careful on the road sometimes, because there's a lot of drink driving, and when there's accidents, sometimes there's violence involved. So Vietnamese men have to be treated with respect and with care. Once when I was walking down Dong Coi Street, which is the main tourist street of Vietnam where I used to live for many years, I saw a vendor selling a book, and it was called Understanding Vietnam. And the book was about half an inch thick, and I thought, wow, you need Gibbon's Encyclopedia to understand Vietnam. It's a Confucius-based society. It's overlain by years and years of conflict against the Chinese, the French, the Americans, the Cambodians, and so it's very complicated. So how would we understand Vietnam in a book, from reading a book which is only half an inch thick? Well, after years of living in Vietnam, 26 years actually, I first came here when Vietnam passed its new foreign investment laws in December 87. I came in January 88, one of the very first foreigners here. Well, I've devised a very simple way to understand Vietnam, and if you follow this way, you will completely understand how Vietnamese people react and think, and how basically Vietnam society works. And it works without fail. And it's what I call the 6 priorities. The first priority is always, with Vietnamese, family. I've lived in places like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, India. I've been to 50 countries and worked and lived in many. But no country that I've lived in anyway or visited has ever had a culture that venerates the family as much as Vietnamese. It's all about family. And their main religion here is stated as Buddhism, but let me tell you, it's really ancestor worship. So family is always the first priority. Somebody may work for you for 5 years, be fantastic and really a good worker, but something may happen to one of the family members. They may be in trouble with the police or being intimidated or blackmailed in some way, and they need money, and they will put pressure on their family member who works for a Western company to embezzle money or to take money in some way, and that person, even though they've worked very well for 5 years, will do so. They will not be able to resist the family pressure. So in many ways, the family is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because it can be used by some family members to manipulate others in the family. The second priority is self. That's not unusual. That's not unusual in the West too. People always have to look after themselves. The third priority is friends, Vietnamese friends. They will look after their friends, and that's why they call each other brother and sister. It's very, very close society. The fourth priority are other Vietnamese. The fifth priority is the country. I work here by running a company which incorporates foreign companies and manages their businesses in Vietnam, and I have done so for many, many years. Sometimes when some applications take a long time because of red tape or because of certain interests with certain government employees, self-interests, people say to me, "Oh, Chris, why is it taking so long? Don't they care that I'm going to come and invest in their country and employ many Vietnamese and build up their economy?" And I say, no, not really, because that's only the fifth priority. They really care far more about their family and themselves, and so it goes down to the fifth priority, which is then the country. This never fails, folks. Okay, I know what I'm talking about. I've been here 26 years doing this business. And the final priority, and the last priority, is the foreigner. It's amazing. Vietnamese are fantastic people. I mean, I've lived all over the world, as I've said, and I live in Vietnam because I choose to live in Vietnam, and I live in Vietnam primarily because I love the people so much. The people here are fantastic, but despite that, they have their ways. If the Vietnamese know you, they are so polite and delightful to you, but if they don't know you, such as on the street, on the motorbike or in the car, they can be absolutely ruthless people like you can't believe. There's no sense of loyalty in Vietnam as we know it because they go strictly by the priorities. So if you learn those priorities and stick to them, then you'll be okay because you'll understand how Vietnam works and how the people think. It never fails. So I leave you with that thought. Learn the priorities and you should be okay. Come to Vietnam and enjoy the people and enjoy the culture and the lifestyle. You'll be so glad you did.